Officer Tom Harris had always been more than just a cop. He was a man devoted to serving his community, with honesty, integrity, and a deep love for his work. For years he had patrolled the streets of his city with his canine partner, Max, a German shepherd who was more than just a working dog to him. Max was family, a loyal companion who had stood by his side through thick and thin. Together, they were a formidable team, always protecting the city and keeping each other safe. They shared a bond that went beyond words, built on trust, respect, and countless hours of training and work together. But that bond was shattered one fateful day. Tom was accused of a crime he didn't commit, framed for a robbery he had no part in. Despite his protests of innocence, the evidence seemed stacked against him, and the justice system failed him. He was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to years in prison. The hardest part of it all wasn't the thought of losing his freedom, it was the thought of being separated from Max. In prison, Tom's life felt like an endless nightmare. Each day felt like an eternity without his partner by his side. The pain of being torn from Max, his best friend, was a wound that never healed. While he sat behind bars, he couldn't help but think of how Max was doing, whether he was being well cared for, or if the dog even remembered him. It was the heartache of losing his canine that tore at him the most, and the one thing he longed for more than anything was to see his loyal friend again, even if it was for the last time. Years passed in the prison, each day blending into the next, but Tom's thoughts were always consumed by the same thing: Max. It didn't matter how many months or even years had gone by since his wrongful conviction. In his heart, Max was still out there, waiting for him, and the bond they shared was as strong as ever. He missed the steady presence of the dog, the comfort of having his loyal companion by his side, and the simple moments they'd spent together, patrolling the streets, enjoying quiet evenings after a long day, and even just sitting together in silence, content in each other's company. But as the years dragged on, things took a darker turn. Tom's health began to deteriorate in the harsh conditions of prison. The stress, lack of proper medical care, and years of isolation were taking their toll on him. The fear of dying in a prison cell without ever seeing Max again became a constant weight on his chest. Rumors of his case being forgotten, of the justice system moving on without ever reviewing his situation, only deepened his sense of hopelessness. He was losing faith, not just in the legal system, but in the possibility that he'd ever get to hold his dog again. Desperation consumed him, and one day he couldn't take it any longer. With trembling hands, he wrote a letter to the warden, pleading for a simple request: to see Max one last time. He explained how much the dog meant to him, how they were partners, and how their bond had been the only thing keeping him alive in this nightmare. It wasn't much to ask for, but in Tom's heart, it was everything. His only hope now was that someone, anyone, might show him some compassion before it was too late. At first, Tom's request was met with indifference. Prison officials, used to receiving letters from inmates asking for a range of things, extra food, better conditions, or even parole, were not prepared for such a heartfelt plea. The warden and his staff saw it as just another desperate plea from a prisoner trying to pull at heartstrings. They dismissed it without much thought, chalking it up to the final futile wish of a man growing desperate in his final days. But Tom wasn't like most prisoners. His request wasn't about making life more comfortable for himself. It was about a bond he could never break, even through prison walls. The letter quickly found its way out of the prison and into the public eye. A local journalist, who had been following Tom's case for some time, caught wind of the story. What started as a simple article about the cop's emotional plea soon exploded into national news. It sparked a wave of public outrage, not just at Tom's unjust conviction, but at the thought of a man dying in prison without the comfort of his faithful canine companion. Soon, social media was flooded with messages of support, using the hashtag Justice for Tom and Max. Animal lovers, justice advocates, and even other law enforcement officers rallied behind Tom's cause. Protests erupted in front of the prison, with people holding signs demanding that Tom be allowed to see Max one last time. The public's response was overwhelming. Tom's request had ignited a movement, and the pressure on the authorities to reconsider their decision grew impossible to ignore. What had begun as a simple plea from a desperate man now had the full force of the nation behind it. The groundswell of public support was impossible to ignore. What began as a simple request for a final reunion between a cop and his canine partner quickly snowballed into a full-blown movement for justice. Media outlets continued to cover the story, and every day, the pressure on the authorities mounted. People from all walks of life were calling for a review of Tom's case. What had initially been dismissed as an inmate's final plea had now become a symbol of everything wrong with the justice system. In an unexpected twist, the prison officials and legal authorities, under immense public pressure, finally relented. The case was reopened for review, and the evidence that had once been overlooked or buried in bureaucracy was now being carefully examined. Investigators, spurred on by the media frenzy, discovered a crucial piece of evidence that had been missed in Tom's trial. New surveillance footage, previously ignored, clearly showed Tom was miles away from the scene of the crime when it occurred, providing irrefutable proof of his innocence. It became evident that he had been framed by someone close to him, and the evidence that could have freed him all along was right there, hidden in plain sight. Just days later, the unthinkable happened. Tom's wrongful conviction was overturned, and he was released from prison. The news spread like wildfire, but it wasn't the freedom that filled Tom's heart with the most relief. It was the thought that just maybe, he could now keep his promise to Max. In a whirlwind of emotion, Tom was taken straight to the facility where Max had been living. As he walked toward the kennel, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The door opened, and there, standing with a wagging tail and a bark of recognition, was Max, waiting for him. The bond, never broken by time or distance, was immediately rekindled. The reunion was nothing short of miraculous, both of them free at last, Tom from prison and Max from the longing that had kept them both waiting for so long. The moment the doors to the kennel swung open, Tom's heart skipped a beat. His eyes scanned the rows of dogs, each one seemingly more excited than the last, but none of them mattered. All he could think about was Max. He hadn't seen his loyal companion in years, but the bond they shared had never faded, not for a single second. As Tom took a step forward, he caught a glimpse of a familiar face. A large German shepherd, his fur graying slightly at the muzzle, but still as strong as ever. "Max!" Tom's voice broke as he called the dog's name. And in that instant, Max's ears perked up, his body froze for a moment, then he broke into a full sprint. The joy in Max's eyes was unmistakable as he bounded toward Tom, his tail wagging so hard that his whole body seemed to move with it. The cop crouched down, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. Max leaped into his arms, knocking him back with the force of his joy, but it didn't matter. Tom clung to him, tears streaming down his face, as if the world had finally made sense again. Max, despite the years, the separation, and the changes in both of them, had never forgotten his partner. Tom was no longer the young, healthy officer he had once been, and Max wasn't the same eager pup he had been on their first patrol together. But the bond between them, built on years of shared experiences, loyalty, and love, remained as unbreakable as ever. Max nuzzled Tom's face, licking away the tears, as if to tell him that everything was going to be okay now. For Tom, it was a moment of pure relief, a final moment of peace after years of torment. He had been through hell, but now, with Max by his side once again, it felt like nothing else mattered. The reunion was everything, heartfelt, emotional, and above all, a reminder of the power of loyalty and the love that transcends time and distance. The world was watching as Officer Tom Harris stepped out of the prison gates, a free man at last. His wrongful conviction had been overturned, and the truth, hidden for so long, had finally come to light. The evidence that had been buried, ignored, and dismissed for years was now impossible to deny. The public outcry had been relentless, and it was that very push that led to Tom's release. In the days following his freedom, he found himself both overwhelmed and humbled by the support that poured in. Messages of congratulations flooded in from all corners, but the greatest gift he received wasn't just his exoneration. It was the reunion with Max, the loyal companion who had waited for him all these years. Max, though older and slower, was still the same dog who had shared countless hours of companionship with Tom. Together, they built a new life, one of peace, and quiet. Max's once vibrant energy had given way to a more gentle pace, but the bond between them had only deepened with time. Every moment they shared, whether it was a walk through the park or sitting quietly at home, was precious, as Tom knew their time together was limited. But in those moments, they were free, together at last, without the shadow of the past hanging over them. Tom became a symbol of redemption. His story was not just about a man who had been wronged, but about the enduring power of loyalty, not just between humans, but between a man and his dog. His journey inspired countless others, and as the public rallied behind the cause for justice, many started to question the flaws in the legal system that allowed innocent people to be wrongfully convicted. Tom's story became a rallying cry for reform, his fight for justice not just his own, but a collective plea for fairness and accountability. As Max aged, Tom treasured every moment, knowing the time they had left was precious. Their story, one of loyalty, resilience, and redemption, became a beacon of hope for those still fighting for justice, reminding everyone that sometimes the greatest bonds are the ones that can never be broken. The story of Officer Tom Harris and his loyal K9 Max is one that resonates deeply with anyone who believes in the enduring power of loyalty, the pursuit of justice, and the unbreakable bonds that can form between humans and animals. At its core, their journey is about much more than a wrongful conviction. It's about the profound connection that exists between a man and his dog, a bond built on trust, companionship, and shared experiences. For Tom, Max was not just a partner in the line of duty, he was a friend, a confidant, and a source of unwavering support. Their relationship transcended the usual boundaries of a police officer and his K9. They were family, and their separation was a wound that neither time nor circumstances could heal. Tom's journey from wrongful conviction to freedom is a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of never giving up on the truth, even when the world seems stacked against you. His fight for justice wasn't just about clearing his name, it was about finding a way back to the one thing that had kept him going through the darkest days: Max. The public's outpouring of support for Tom's plea to see his dog one last time sparked a movement, not just for justice in his case, but for all those who had suffered unjustly. The reunion between Tom and Max was a moment that captured the very essence of redemption. It was the culmination of years of pain, heartache, and hope, and it left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Their story became a symbol of loyalty, not just the loyalty of a dog to its owner, but of the loyalty of a man to his principles, to his partner, and to the hope of a better life. The bond they shared showed the world that sometimes the most enduring relationships are those built on unconditional love and mutual respect, no matter the obstacles that may arise.